Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Physician's Mind podcast, where we explore the clarity, discipline, and strength that it takes to thrive in medicine and in life. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Alex Schloe, a physician, entrepreneur, and active duty Air Force veteran who's redefining what financial freedom looks like for healthcare professionals. Dr. Schloe is the co-founder of The RAL Room, where he mentors and consults on residential assisted living ventures, and he's the host of the Physicians and Properties podcast, helping doctors and professionals diversify income, build wealth, and reclaim their time. His expertise spans residential assisted living, multifamily, and commercial real estate, and his mission is clear: to empower physicians to take control of their futures. Our conversation isn't just about real estate, it's about mindset, freedom, and building a life where medicine is a calling, not a cage. Dr. Schloe, welcome to the Physician's Mind. How are you, sir?
Awesome. Curtis, I'm so glad to be on the podcast, man. Before we get started, one, thanks for that intro. That was a better intro than I could have even given myself. And two, love what you're doing. And like we talked about before the podcast, man, it's so cool to see what you're doing while still in med school. I wish I had the courage to start a podcast and do all of this while I was in med school. So really pumped to see what you're doing. It's been really cool to follow along with your journey.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it, sir. So you are a physician and the host of the Physicians and Properties podcast. What first inspired you to explore real estate while practicing medicine?
Awesome, Curtis. Great question. First I'd say I'm a Christ follower, a husband, a father, physician, host of the podcast. That's kind of my priorities. But yeah, man, I think for me, my story goes all the way back to when I was a kid. I don't know if you remember, it probably didn't exist when you were growing up, but there used to be these like little pamphlet or booklets of houses that were for sale in the area. And I was just always intrigued with real estate and was always grabbing these pamphlets from the food line and looking at them and just thinking about real estate. And fast forward to when I got into med school, my dad and I were walking through Richmond, Virginia, and we were looking at apartments. And that's where I went to medical school at the Medical College of Virginia. And my dad was like, "Hey, how about you take your $20,000 signing bonus from the Air Force Health Promotion Scholarship Program? How about you take that and you put that towards a property, like a duplex, and fix that up and then rent that out to one of your classmates?" And my dad didn't have a lot of investment experience or real estate experience. And unfortunately, I did what most kids do and I didn't listen to him. And I ended up renting an apartment and wasting a bunch of money. But he planted a seed right there. And I think that and the culmination of like just curiosity in general and the fact that my family did not really have a strong financial position when I was growing up, and finances and money were always kind of taboo and difficult to talk about, and a lot of stress for my parents and for me and my twin brother. I think that led to like, hey, there's got to be another way to build up some more income streams. There's got to be some ways to support me and my family, and I don't want them to ever be in the position where they have to worry about finances. And so that's really what drove me towards real estate. And then I knew once I got through medical school, I was like, hey, I'm going to either buy a quadplex on the VA loan, or I'm going to use the physician loan, both no money down loan products, and I'm going to turn this into a real estate investment. Went to residency at Eglin Air Force Base for family medicine, and there weren't a lot of small multifamilies that were available. And so I bought a live-in flip. It was a light flip. It was $58 out of pocket using the physician loan. And I remember being terrified about spending $58 because I'm frugal and cheap. And then we kind of did a live-in flip there and turned that into a rental, and then it just kind of snowballed from there. So that's a brief overview of what inspired me. Really, it was my dad, and then the fact that I wanted to make sure I was providing a really secure future for my family as well.
Incredible. What are some of the challenges or realizations that pushed you on top of the inspiration from your father from being just a doctor to being a doctor and real estate investor?
That's a great question. I think the biggest challenge, and of course on my podcast, Physicians and Properties, I've been really fortunate to interview a lot of docs and talk with them about that in this question. I think the biggest thing is just lack of education initially, and then lack of willingness to just take action. As physicians, we all have that personality where we want to know all the details. We want to know all the information. And then we get stuck in that analysis paralysis stage. And then we never purchase our first deal. And then we don't know, like, hey, what are all the benefits that could happen with that? And then that snowball happens where that one deal leads to two, leads to four, leads to eight. And so it's just that willingness to get that initial education, that willingness to take action. I think that's what every doctor faces. I think that's what I faced. Unfortunately, I realized that, or sorry, fortunately, I realized that really early on. And so I was able to get started while in residency. But I think that those are the big things that all physicians kind of struggle with is analysis paralysis and then taking action.
Okay. So analysis paralysis, which can prevent physicians from really just taking action. That's what you would say is one of the biggest hurdles to overcome in the initial stages.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of fear amongst investments, and I think a lot of physicians have fear of being preyed upon. I think we don't get a lot of education in medical school. I didn't get any in terms of entrepreneurship or real estate or taxes or finances. I think that doesn't really exist or didn't really exist at the time now with White Coat Investor and Frankie Davis and Kyle Stevenson and some of the other folks that we talked about before the podcast who are incredible. I think that's really becoming more known, but you have to be willing to do that education outside of medical school, which is difficult, and outside of residency, which is difficult. And so I think, taking the time to educate yourself and then understanding like, hey, I don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. I can just copy things that have already worked. And that's what every entrepreneur has done throughout time, right? If you look at Steve Jobs, absolutely amazing entrepreneur. He took a lot of principles from Edwin Land, who started Kodak and Polaroid. And so, like, it's just copying and iterating and going forward that I think is really important.
Excellent. Yeah, and we're about to dive into some of the principles that the listeners can draw to apply to their own journeys. But before we get into that, Alex, what led you to start Physicians and Properties and later the Row Room?
Yeah, awesome, Curtis. Well, physicians and properties, I started just because I had a lot of colleagues and friends who were in the medical space, mainly docs, who were reaching out to me like, hey, man, what in the world are you doing with real estate? And I told everybody in residency that I was working with, everyone I came in contact with, like, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm learning about. This is awesome. And so I just had a lot of folks who kept reaching out to me. And then honestly, truthfully, physicians and properties just started from that. But then the podcast came from the fact that I heard Tom Burns speak on the Action Academy podcast. Dr. Tom Burns, he's an orthopedic surgeon, wrote the book, The Rich Doctor, incredible guy. And I heard him speak on a podcast and I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like here we have an orthopedic surgeon who's doing all these cool things. He's traveling, he's taking care of patients because he wants to, not because he has to, and he's practicing medicine how he wants. And so I told my wife, I was like, hey, I'm going to start a podcast if I can get Dr. Tom Burns to be the first guest. So I emailed Dr. Burns. I didn't hear anything back for a couple months. I was like, sweet, I'm in the clear. I don't have to do this. And he emailed me back and was like, I would absolutely love to be the first guest. I'm sorry I was backpacking through Panama. And I was like, that's awesome. And he came on, he was the first guest, and the rest is history. And I realized, as we were talking about beforehand, how incredible podcasting is for a networking tool. And then for me, how cool it is to see folks that actually learn from you and from that time and effort. You were mentioning how you've been kind of following along with my journey for the last year, dude. Like, even if it was just you who gained something from it, it is incredibly worth it. And so it's been really, really cool. In terms of the Row Room, we realized in the residential assisted living space, and that's largely what I invest in now, which we'll get to that. But we realized in the residential assisted living space, there was not a lot of education that was out there. There's some self-study courses and some kind of larger organizations, and then there's one-on-one consultants, both of which are pretty costly. And I have been in a mastermind for about 5 years called the War Room, which is for military folks, from military to millionaire, started by Dave Perret. He's a good friend. And my two partners, Charlie, Luke, and I, we achieved financial freedom through the War Room. And we realized, hey, there's nothing like this that exists for assisted living. We should start it. And we had a lot of people coming to us as well and asking, hey, how do I buy an assisted living property? Can I partner with you? Can you teach me what you're doing? All these sorts of things. We realized, like, hey, there's a great market for this. Let's do this. And it's been amazing. The community is incredible. We have a goal through the community and through the podcast to open 100 residential assisted living homes by 2030. And we're getting close to that. And we're super pumped about that. And so it's just been really, really awesome. And it's been a great opportunity for us to network and build relationships with just incredible people who are doing amazing things to take better care of seniors.
Awesome. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. Podcasts are a fantastic way to network. I've been following your journey. On the topic of the podcast, you talk a lot about financial freedom. Why do you think so many physicians struggle financially despite having such high incomes?
Great question, Curtis. I think a lot of it goes back to the lack of education that we talked about earlier. And then I think another big thing is that lifestyle creep that happens. I mean, we make pennies as residents. We have a lot of us have a lot of student debt that we need to overcome. And then we go from making, $50,000 a year to potentially making $500,000, depending what your specialty is. And that is just a huge jump. And then you're surrounded by a lot of folks who are driving the new fancy car, wearing the nice suits, wearing the Rolex. And so that lifestyle creep happens really quickly. And I think part of it is physicians feel as if like, hey, I've delayed gratification for so long. Now it's time to just get after it. And so they buy the big doctor house and the fancy doctor car. And so they realize really quickly that their expenses have increased dramatically and creeped up with their income. And then their income still leads them going from paycheck to paycheck. And so I think that's the big thing I always tell folks, especially, in residency right before becoming attending, like things are going to change dramatically. Now is not the time for you to hurry up and buy your big fancy house and your doctor car. I would say the only caveat to that is if you're going to buy a big house and house hack it with your buddies or something like that, may be a reasonable option. But yeah, I just think lack of education is a big part, and then lifestyle creep.
Okay, sure. Yeah, both common pitfalls, I think. Lack of education, which we discussed a little bit earlier, and lifestyle creep. It makes complete sense. I mean, I think they say keeping up with the Joneses is one of the best ways to stay broke.
Absolutely right.
So, what mindset shift has helped you break free of that doctor only mindset and really start thinking like a business owner?
I think as doctors, we're wired really well to be business owners. And I think the two can go together. I mean, if you look at our training, like we know how to manage teams, we know how to handle really stressful events, we know how to communicate with people. A lot of us have some pretty decent emotional intelligence and the ability to break bad news and the ability to talk to people that's relatable. And then if you can get through medical school, if you can get through residency, like owning a business is not nearly as hard as that, especially with a little bit of education, some mentorship, those sorts of things. And so I don't think you necessarily have to break free of the doctor only mentality, but you have to be willing to understand that the white coat's not everything. And I talk a lot about on my podcast the golden stethoscope or like golden handcuffs that people have heard about and getting stuck in situations. And that's largely because of that lifestyle creep. That's largely because of student debt. And that's largely because of fear and not really understanding, like, hey, how can some degree of passive income really change my life and then lead to that freedom that you desire, whether that's with your family, whether that's at work, whether that's having time to do some of your hobbies. And so I think that that's really important to think about. And then just being willing to learn that, like, hey, what are those differences of being a business owner? But fundamentally, I think every doctor could be a fantastic business owner just based off our skill set and what we've done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Dr. Frankie Davis, real estate investor MD, always says if you can make it through med school, make it through residency. Real estate in particular, he mentions, but I'm sure it applies to all business adventures. Real estate is much easier than residency. So if you can make it through that stuff, you're more than capable of succeeding in business. Absolutely. How has diversifying with real estate changed your relationship with medicine and enhanced your sense of autonomy?
Yeah, that's a great question. Real estate's been a huge game changer for me and for my family, and entrepreneurship as well, because we do have the Rauer Mastermind and small business there. So I think the big thing is freedom. I separated from the Air Force June 29th, and I had this goal of like, hey, I want to be able to separate from the Air Force and go into a season of my life where I'm practicing medicine because I want to, not because I have to. And I want to practice medicine how I want to. And then I also want to spend a lot more time with my family. And I think folks are chasing after financial freedom or chasing after family freedom and the ability to do what we want with our family. And we're also chasing after the freedom to practice medicine how we want to. And so it took a lot of hard work to get to that point, but it's allowed me to take 3 months off after the Air Force and, with terminal leave, and then just taking some time off, was able to travel for a month in Europe with the family, was able to take a month and go camping in Glacier National Park in Yellowstone and the Tetons, and then just have a more flexible life and try and slow things down a little bit, but also open up that time to be creative, to think, to work on our real estate businesses, to work on the assisted living side of things, and to work on the podcast. It's just been really cool, man. So right now I'm practicing medicine 2 days a week at a direct primary care clinic, which is amazing. It's an incredible way to really build relationships with patients. Each appointment is at least 30 minutes long. Oftentimes they're 40 minutes to an hour. You can really dive into building relationships with them, determining social determinants of health, and really take care of the whole person, which is really difficult to do when you're, in the conveyor belt of family medicine, seeing 18 to 22, 25 patients and just don't really have a lot of time to really nail down what's the root cause of their ailment and how to prevent that and really practice preventative medicine. It just leads to reactive medicine. So that's been really awesome to have that flexibility and get to help also grow that direct primary care business as well. So it's just been really fun, man. So I think the biggest thing is just real estate entrepreneurship can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want to.
Yeah, it's absolutely inspiring to hear that from you because it just shows what's possible. You don't have to be trapped in the medical conveyor belt. If you put in some time, get the education, and take the risk, I mean, what lies ahead is tremendously valuable. So, very inspiring, and that's just why it's so great to hear this advice from you, sir. Can you tell us what some of the biggest fears or mental barriers that you had to overcome when you started investing? I mean, you mentioned some common ones are lack of education and just overanalyzation, but was there anything else particularly that you faced?
Yeah, those are definitely 2 that I faced. I think it's also now in a world where education has become a lot more accessible. It's easy to get stuck in, like, I'm just gonna keep educating, I'm gonna keep educating, I'm gonna keep educating and not take action. The other thing is shiny object syndrome, and I think, different people have different takes on shiny object syndrome, and I've definitely suffered from it. But my take on shiny object syndrome is essentially you're going to an ice cream shop, there's a bunch of different flavors. Those flavors recommend the different asset classes of real estate or entrepreneurship, and when you're first getting started, it is totally okay to take a free sample and to sample one of those flavors and figure out, okay, which one do I like? And then once you realize, like, hey, I really like residential assisted living and I feel like this is the avenue I want to take, then going all in from that side of things, I think is completely reasonable. And so that's another thing I think is difficult for physicians to overcome, a mental barrier for me as well of like, hey, I really like learning about mobile home parks and hotels and multifamily and Airbnbs and residential assisted living. But I have seen that, like, hey, I think the best potential in real estate now and for decades to come is in assisted living. I need to really focus on that. I'm a big fan of Alex Hormozy, and he talks about the lady in the red dress, and it's essentially like, hey, you've focused on one woman or one business, and then the lady in the red dress walks by, and she's trying to get your attention, and that's the other business, that's the other asset class. You just need to divert your eyes and focus on what you're doing. You're going to be way more successful that way long term.
Wow, yeah, that's actually a fantastic piece of advice. Considering how everything can be so appealing, you're better off focusing all of your energy on one for a long time and avoiding the distractions. And that's probably, I mean, they say, I think, successful people aren't super talented. They've just ignored everything else except their chosen craft for a very long period of time. So that's what that reminds me of. And that's a great piece of advice, sir. I think now we've discussed most of the foundation of how you got into real estate investing, some of the basic principles, some of the things that prevent people from getting into it. Now let's get into the nitty gritty here. So, for somebody who's new, can you tell us what drew you to real estate? I think we've covered that pretty substantially, but what was it that made residential assisted living and multifamily or commercial properties, what made those particular endeavors stand out to you? And why did you choose those as opposed to any of those other options?
Absolutely. Well, we can kind of talk about my portfolio and investing experience, which I think will help answer that, and which will also show that I have shiny object syndrome too. But essentially, got started with that first property in Florida that we used the physician loan on, no money down. It's an incredible opportunity for folks to purchase a home with no money down. You can do that in residency. If I could turn back time, if I was well, not if I was single, but if you were single and you were in residency, it's a perfect opportunity to purchase a home with no money down put your residency mates in the home, rent out different bedrooms, do co-living, and cash flow significantly while you're in residency and you're not really at home anyways. And so, anyways, my first property was that, no money down. Then we pivoted to some short-term rentals. We had a few short-term rentals, a couple partners, and we self-managed those, and that was a fun experience. We did like the hospitality space. We realized quickly that purchasing in very rural markets can be very difficult to find cleaners, to find handymen, to find service providers. And so we sold some of those short term rentals. We still have one in the mountains of Colorado. And then we also house hack our basement still to this day. That's a separate apartment. And that pretty much covers all our mortgage, taxes, and insurance, which is pretty awesome to live in Colorado Springs basically for free. And so we did the short-term rental space. And then in between that and like really getting to assisted living, I invested as an LP, a limited partner in a few deals in the mobile home park space. And then I helped raise capital and a general partner on a boutique hotel in Tennessee, and then a independent living development in the villages of Florida, and another independent living development in Florida. And then we've also, through that time period, purchased 5 assisted living homes that we lease to operators. So the operators run all the day-to-day care. We own the real estate, and they lease that back from us. And then we have another portfolio of homes that we're partnered with an operator as well. And then now, currently, we're working on new development. We just raised $2.6 million for a new development in Texas that we're going to build 2 16-bed, 16-bath memory care mansions to take care of 16 residents per home. And then we're doing a similar development in Winchester, Virginia. And then we're also working on partnering with some operators to take down a little bit bigger assisted living facilities. So as you can see, I definitely had a lot of shiny object syndrome and went down a lot of different avenues and paths before I figured and realized that assisted living is the one for me. In terms of assisted living, I could talk about it all day. Really, the big thing is we've all heard about the silver tsunami. There's 2 different silver tsunamis that are happening. There's the baby boomers who own a lot of the small businesses who are ready to retire. And that's a huge opportunity to get into the small business space, and great resources. Alex Hormozy, Cody Sanchez, like they're awesome in that space. Action Academy, my buddy Brian Lubin, like that's great for small businesses. And that's a really awesome way to cash flow. And then there's the baby boomers who are there's the aging population that's aging into these assisted living homes. And there's 77 million baby boomers. 7 out of 10 of them are going to require long-term care. That's 59 million boomers. And right now, 82% or so of folks who live in assisted living are not the boomer generation. They're a lot of the silent generation. And so there is a huge opportunity. There's projections that we're 600,000 to 1 million beds short as of right now, and that $1 trillion of investment needs to be made to even keep up with that demand in the assisted living and senior living space. So from a supply demand mismatch, like, dude, this is such an incredible opportunity. Not to mention that the kind of boutique, residential, high quality care, low caregiver ratio is such a better way to take care of seniors and provide the care that they deserve. And that's the care that I would want for my grandma or grandpa as well. So I love it. I could talk about assisted living forever, but I'll pause there because I've been going after it for a bit.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So first and foremost, I want to ask, what year did you first do that no money down loan purchase on that home in Florida?
Yeah, that was going into residency 2018.
So 2018, that was roughly 7 years ago now, folks. Just want to make it clear. You always see the success, but it's important to consider the journey that comes before that. I mean, you started with that one property, and then as you detailed, there was many different things you kind of checked out before you really honed in on RAL. So that's really cool. And secondly, to put it in layman's terms, I mean, residential assisted living, those are retirement homes effectively, right? Like that's where basically you have just rooms and caretaking services for elderly folks.
Yeah, a simple way to think about it is, anytime anyone hears assisted living, we think about like these big box facilities, these nursing homes that a lot of us have rotated through, and they're terrible and smell like urine, and the caregivers are running around like their hair's on fire because they're taking care of 20, 30 people. That is not what we're doing. So we're focused more on the residential model. So that's typically 6 to 16 residents in a large single story home, ideally as many bedrooms and bathrooms as you can have. And that caregiver ratio ranges from like 1 to 5, 1 to 8, depending on the level of care. And this is not a nursing home, so we're not providing a lot of medical care. There is medication management that's happening, and some other kind of basic medical care and so forth, but this is not a nursing home. So it's really help with more assistance of activities of daily living. If you
Got
look
it.
at kind of the senior living space, Curtis, like you would essentially start with independent living. So that's like our 55 plus community, right? Of seniors. They don't need help with activities of daily living. They just want to downsize or they just want to live in an awesome community with seniors. Then, as they need more help with activities of daily living, then they go into assisted living, whether that be big box or residential assisted living. And then, as they continue to age and potentially, develop dementia or something along those lines, they may go into a higher level of care, like a memory care home or a nursing home, and go from there.
Gotcha. Okay, there you go. I mean, you found the niche and it's proven to be incredibly profitable with tremendous potential in the future. And that's what it's all about. Now, looking back on that 7-year journey thus far, what were some of the early mistakes you made as a physician investor and how can other people avoid those mistakes?
Yeah, I think back, a lot of it was fear of putting in offers, right? Like you can't get a deal if you don't put in an offer. And then same thing, analysis paralysis or just kind of fear of the unknown. I think back to even some properties that we had under contract. And oh man, it hurts thinking back what we had them under contract for and what they recently traded for. Like we were under contract on a triplex in Panama City Beach, Florida, and so a 3 unit property, you could see the beach from it. It was about 2 blocks from the beach. Long story short, it was gonna be our first short-term rental, and me and my partner, Charlie, some things came up with inspection and a couple other things, and we were like, this is too risky. Let's not purchase this." And we were under contract for 440, and it just recently sold for $880,000. So that hurts, not to mention the cash flow that would have accrued during that time and the debt pay down and everything else, and, we all have stories like that. There's plenty of other deals that were similar scenario for me, and I don't necessarily regret it. It was a good learning opportunity, but, I think you just have to be willing to know your numbers and understand that, like, hey, long term, this is probably all going to work out as real estate always has over time, and be willing to take a little bit of risk and get in the game.
Well, yeah, very cool. You just kind of take that leap of faith sometimes. That stings though. 448. Yeah, that
Oh
stings for
man.
sure.
Yeah, it hurts, and the other thing too, I was just thinking about, Curtis, is that like a lot of times we have fear as physicians of taking that leap. And I think about like, picture if you want to take the leap and say, hey, I want to generate enough passive income so I can go from working 5 days a week to 4 days a week. All right. And maybe that's one short term rental, or maybe that's one assisted living home, or whatever that may be. That's your cash flow vehicle. Worst comes to worst, if that completely fails, you could just go back to working 5 days a week and you're totally fine. Or if you're like, hey, I'm going to cut back and go half time, I would say, hey, go ahead and build up that passive income as you go. But again, if you fail, you can just go back to work. So sometimes our biggest fears are our present day reality. And we just need to be willing to lean into that and be like, hey, this is all going to work out. I have a high income job. I'm not going to overextend myself and over leverage myself, but I do want to get started on this journey. The risk is minimal from that perspective.
Yeah, that's part of the beautiful blessing of being a physician is that you kind of can afford to take a little more risk because ultimately you have a much bigger cushion and fallback as opposed to a traditional real estate investor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, to transition into some broader lessons and maybe some philosophy that you have learned about, so to speak, let's discuss how doctors, being trained to think so clinically and systematically, how have you applied that same mindset as you approach building your wealth, building your portfolio, and landing deals?
Yeah, I think the doctor mind, the physician's mind is it's an incredible tool and asset. can also be a little bit of a liability. I think it's an incredible tool because we all really know how to take a large amount of data, synthesize that down to like what are the key points, what's like the patient summary statement, and make decisions and move forward from that perspective. So I think that that is really helpful to have that clinical, systematic mindset as you're approaching investing or real estate or entrepreneurship. I think that can be really helpful. But I also think, as we mentioned before, it can be difficult because sometimes you don't have all the information and you have to be willing to take that leap. And if you get stuck in, okay, I want to just listen to more and more podcasts and read more and more books or know more and more information in regards to this deal or this potential opportunity, then you can miss out on a really great opportunity down the road that can completely change your life. So I think it's really important to understand and do enough due diligence to realize what the risks are, but don't be so into the weeds that you never take action and get started. Because really, time is going to be such a huge compounding factor for you.
And can you share a story, be it from yourself or a client of yours, that just really captures the power that real estate has to change a physician's life?
Oh man, there's a lot of stories through the podcast that I can think of. And we already hit my own as well, and how that's led to a lot of freedom. I would encourage folks to read The Rich Doctor, Tom Burns' story, because I think that's really inspirational as well. One that comes to mind is Dr. Mamta Kumar. She was a physician in Texas, and she was doing inpatient medicine. And long story short, she started investing in land, which is of course another avenue of real estate investing and flipping land. And she unfortunately suffered with some medical issues and got really quite sick, but was able to build up this business. And then very quickly, her land flipping business far exceeded her medical income. And she was able to essentially walk away from her job as a physician and go all in on this land flipping business, which then gave her a lot more time to focus on healing herself and spending more time with her family and being a more present mother. And so there's a lot of stories like that out there. And I think a lot of times we get wrapped up in like passive income. And what I want folks to understand is like truly passive income doesn't really exist. Like any investment takes some degree of time and effort. Even if you're just a limited partner in a deal, it's going to take time to vet the general partnership team. It's going to take time to vet the deal. It's going to take time to figure out, is this an opportunity for you? After that point, sure, it's mailbox money. But the degree of work, the amount of active work you put into that deal is going to lead to the amount of passive income you could potentially generate and the ability to change your life. And so figuring out what degree of passivity you want is really important. But I do think we fall into kind of that passive income trap from time to time. And then financial freedom, I think a lot of time doctors think they have to go from zero passive income or zero alternative income streams to like, hey, I need to replace my full income in a year. And that can be really difficult to do. It's possible, but think about it as like some degree of passive income can be really helpful for you. And maybe that's going from 5 days to 4 days to 3 days to 2 days and just gradually paring that back as more and more income goes. Or maybe that's the ability to spend more time practicing at the free clinic or whatever that may be. So I want you to think about just some degree of passive income, some degree of freedom can be really important.
That's just very inspiring. And like you mentioned, there's countless stories that come from your podcast of people who have changed their lives through this business. So it's the really endless potential there. And can you share now the importance of mentorship along this journey and some mentors that have guided you and why mentorship is so important as opposed to trying to figure it out by yourself?
That's a great question. Yeah, mentorship, however that looks like for you, is incredibly important. I have gained a lot of value and mentorship through mastermind programs. That's been huge for me. And surrounding yourself with like minded individuals who are doing the same thing as you and are showing you that, like, hey, this is a possibility that exists, right? Like, it blows my mind. I'm in Action Academy, in that mastermind, I'm in the War Room mastermind, and it blows my mind seeing what people can achieve if they're willing to like just take action and get after it and really put in the hustle and put in the work. And so I think that's a big thing that is important, is just seeing what's achievable, and surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals who are really crushing it can be a huge game changer for folks. One-on-one mentorship can be really great as well. I haven't really had a specific like one-on-one mentor. I've been in these mastermind communities, and that's filled that role for me. But that can be really helpful too, reaching out, and finding a mentor. I will say, a lot of times folks will reach out and just be like, "Hey, I wanna pick your brain," or, "Hey, let's grab coffee," or whatever that'll be. That's tough, you think about, a lot of physicians are working full-time clinically, and they have families, and they're doing all these other things, and they have their real estate and entrepreneurship. So, I would encourage you to think about if you're looking for a mentor, you're reaching out to someone who you want to mentor you, figure out how you can provide them some sort of value, figure out what their pain point is. Maybe it's like you hear them on a podcast talking about how they're having a difficult time finding deals, and you bring them a deal opportunity and potentially split it with them. There's a lot of different ways that you can add value, where a mentor or a potential mentor will be like, "Hey, this person's committed to taking action. They've already done this and they've gone from there." The other thing I'll say is, if someone says like, "Hey," or a potential mentor says, "Hey, you should read this book," or "You should listen to this podcast," you should then read the book, take a picture of the book that you purchased it, read it, and then be like, "Hey, I read this book and these are the insights that I have." It's crazy to me that the people that will reach out to me and I'll be like, "Hey, how about you read this book and then get back to me and then let's hop on a phone call?" Probably 9 out of 10 of them never even read whatever the book was or listened to the podcast. And so just being willing to take a little bit of action, and show that initiative can go a long way in finding a mentor.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that actually. Dr. Kyle Stevenson, I asked him months ago what book recommendations he would have. And he's like, okay, Money Master the Game, Second Chance by Robert Kiyosaki, and What Would the Rockefellers Do? Literally bought them on Amazon, sent him a pic of all three of them the next day. Great reads. I'm like, I love it. And I'm
Yeah,
looking forward to your book recommendations after this too. We're going to share those
absolutely.
with the audience for sure. So absolutely, yeah. And it may not be one-on-one mentorship, but I really appreciate how you said, how can you offer value to this person? Because it's so true that even myself as a medical student now, I'm in a position where I can mentor like some pre-meds, but I'm like, I am so busy now and I can't even imagine what it must be like as an attending physician, managing the businesses, managing the family. It's like, why would I spend time just mentoring for the sake of mentorship? Obviously, because I mean, it's valuable to do that, no doubt, but it doesn't hurt to be able to offer some value to a mentor as well. Great point there. And joining mastermind groups, being surrounded by excellent people that are capable of just being generative and coming up with new ideas is so important because it's like iron sharpens iron, right? So
Absolutely. Yeah. And Curtis, to double back on what you said, you are mentoring a lot of people just through your podcast. And that's something that I didn't really realize. It's so cool to share your journey on the podcast and hop on calls with folks. And it's pretty wild when they're like, "Hey, how was your camping trip?" And like, "How's Jack doing?" Who's my oldest son. And I'm like, wait, how do they know about this? And I realize it's the podcast. And so it's really cool to share life and kind of mentor people through that space, which is awesome as well. So you're certainly doing a lot of great things for med students. And if folks are listening to this right now, take a moment and go ahead and leave Curtis a 5-star rating and a review because that's how podcasts grows. So go ahead and pay it forward to Curtis. But yeah, man, I completely agree. Finding a way to provide value and exactly what you did with Dr. Kyle Stevenson is what I would recommend folks do. Just take a picture of the book, read the book, and then like provide some thoughts. And you never know where that relationship may go.
yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate the kind words about the podcast. Thank you very much. Now, on the topic of mentorship, actually, if you were advising a med student or a resident or even a physician, just a brand new guy at the start of the road, what is one thing they should start doing now to set themselves up for success and financial freedom later?
Yeah, I think as a med student and a resident, what's most important is like learning how to be a really good physician and learning how to really take care of patients well. And I'll say that there is some time, like you definitely have some pockets of time that you can educate yourself. And I think that's really important. I remember talking with Dr. Frankie Davis about like how him and I both like used to listen to podcasts, like him before he would go to the OR and me before I would go round or like driving into work and just finding little pockets of time that you can learn and absorb some of this information can be really helpful just to get a step up. White Coat Investor is also a great resources. There's a lot of great resources now that exist that didn't really exist when I was going through school. Bigger Pockets, just tons of different resources that are out there that can be really helpful. And so finding a little bit of time to learn, also focusing on the fact that I want to become the best doctor I can I mentioned if you're a resident, I really, really think you should strongly consider thinking about how you could house hack while you're in residency. And the no money down loan is a perfect example of how you could potentially buy a property and you could lease each room out to a different roommate. And you could really make some significant cash flow or at least break even and live for free while you're in residency, while you're working like crazy. And you're getting tax benefits, you're getting the debt pay down, you're getting appreciation, you're getting a lot of benefits from that with not a lot of effort. And frankly, if it's all your residency mates, like you're all going to be working a ton. So like it doesn't really matter. It's not like they're going to trash the home or anything like that. So that's a great way to do it. If you're military, whether you're active duty, whether you're in the Guard of Reserve, if you have access to the VA loan, that's another amazing no money down loan product. And the crazy thing about the VA loan is you can buy up to a 4-unit property. So you could buy a quadplex, a 4-unit apartment building, live in one of those units and then rent out the other 3. Okay, then you have 4 units and those 3 other units are paying you to live there. It's amazing and you're getting all those benefits as well. And you can reuse these loans too. So it can just be an incredible wealth builder. I really don't think every physician should be a millionaire and could be a millionaire if they just bought 1 or 2 of those properties, no money down, and gone from there. There's some stipulations that you have to look into, but it's an incredible opportunity to get started while you're in residency that doesn't take a lot of effort, does take a little bit of risk, and does take time to find the right deal. But man, like imagine if you bought a home while you're in residency and you're getting paid, even if it's $500 a month to live there for free, getting paid $500 a month and getting all those real estate benefits. Like it can really set you up for success.
Yeah, that's huge. And that actually prompts a question that I've been wondering. With the VA loan, you obviously know the answer to this. You can buy multi-unit properties. Because I was wondering, can you use the VA loan and house hack? Is that a
Oh,
possibility?
100%.
Wow,
100%. Yep,
very
yep. That's
cool.
what I tried to do. I tried initially to buy a small multifamily property in Florida that just wasn't any for sale, which is why I bought single family. It can be a little bit if you're in the HPSP program, it can be a little bit trickier to get that VA loan approved until you're in your first year of residency, because you're kind of like in this gray area of active duty. But yeah, absolutely. You can use the VA loan. You can buy up to a 4-unit property. They just, I think, completely eliminated the limits in terms of how much you could potentially purchase with that VA loan. And you can also reuse the VA loan multiple times. There is a funding fee that becomes involved if you use it multiple times. And there's some other things that become more complicated there. But yeah, you can 100% use the VA loan to buy a small multifamily property and house hack it and then just rack and stack.
Nice. Well, there we go. That's key for any military personnel. I know myself being in the Guard, I think we're eligible for the VA loan after 6 years of service. And I was totally thinking like, okay, how could that work with the house hacking down the road? So see, that goes to show the value of the podcast, the things you learn. It's just awesome. Now, at the end of the day, what is just the one core lesson that you want every listener, be it a doctor, a professional, a student, to take away about reclaiming their time and building wealth and just living a great life of financial freedom?
Oh man, that is a tough, tough question because there's a lot of lessons I can think of. One lesson I would say would just again just have the willingness to educate yourself, to take action, and to do it. I mean the freedom, time, time is the one thing that we're never going to get back. And I think, figuring out what you want to spend your time doing, what's most important to you, and then chasing after that and understanding that some degree of financial freedom and passive income is going to give you more time to be able to do those passions and those things you love is going to be incredibly important. So, yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. I mean, it's that simple. Sometimes there's just some key lessons, but there's also just so many. So, on top of that, what are some of the book recommendations you would have?
Oh man, lots of them. I love to read. So I'll give you some book recommendations and a couple podcast recommendations if you don't mind.
Let's do it.
Getting started. Rich Dad Poor Dad is typically the Purple Bible. That's typically the mindset shift that everyone needs. So Rich Dad Poor Dad, I would recommend it for getting started. The Rich Doctor by Dr. Tom Burns. From Passive to Passionate by my buddy Brian Lubin. Those are all excellent books just in general for getting started, kind of figuring out like, hey, what is passive income? What is financial freedom? What are different asset classes that are available? Bigger Pockets has a ton of great books on real estate in general. Brendan Turner's wrote some amazing books through them in terms of property management and getting started in rental property investing. Alex Hormozy's books are absolutely amazing. $100 million leads, $100 million offers. He just came out with $100 million money models I just got yesterday, so pumped to read that. His stuff is amazing, definitely more focused towards entrepreneurship, but some really exciting things and key insights there. I could keep going. Those are the big ones in terms of book recommendations I can think of for folks that are getting started. Podcast wise, man, I love the Action Academy podcast. I listen to that religiously. And then the Founders podcast is one I just recently started listening to a lot. And Alex Hormozy's The Game. But Founders Podcast is really cool because David Senna, he's the one that does the podcast. He basically reads biographies of incredible founders like Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, and he distills them down into the podcast. And, you can learn so much by reading these biographies or listening to this podcast of what these incredible business minds are doing, and some of these folks are no longer with us, but they took the time to share those insights and share that wisdom. And you can learn so much about it. And as I mentioned before, like Edwin Land, who founded Polaroid, Steve Jobs copied a lot of what Edwin Land did, and it was a great inspiration for him. And then, Steve Jobs has inspired so many other people. And so you can learn so much from the past. So Founders Podcast has been something I've really been consuming a lot of right now.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for sharing those. I mean, endless sources of wisdom, great books, great podcasts. And on the topic of podcasts, you mentioned off air that you have recently been on a couple of the big podcasts. What was it like being on the White Coat Investor and on the Better Life podcast? I mean, what led up to that? What was that experience like? That's awesome.
Oh man, that was fun. Both of those. Better Life just came through relationships, actually from my podcast. Amanda Hahn introduced me to Brandon Turner, and I have some other friends who are good friends with Brandon Turner, and been really fortunate to now kind of be in his sphere. And I just love the guy and love everything that he does. So that's how, both of those really was just relationships. And so you never know what relationships can completely change your life. And I think that's so important in real estate and entrepreneurship, and in the physician space. Like, there's so many incredible physician entrepreneurs who are so willing to share their time, share their knowledge, provide podcast, all sorts of learning opportunities that can be so incredibly life-changing. But yeah, man, it all boils down to relationships, and being on those podcasts were so cool. I mean, I've listened to Brandon Turner on Bigger Pockets for so long, and then his podcast Better Life, and then being on there was like super surreal. And I was really nervous to be on the podcast, but then dude, it just like he's the same person on the podcast and pre-recording as he is on it. And so it was like just really cool. I mean, it wasn't stressful. It was just an amazing opportunity. The whole time I was like, this is nuts. This is so cool. So yeah.
Nice. And I hope one day, years down the line, when the Physicians and Properties podcast is blowing up and I've started my investment journey and I actually have something valuable to share, we can connect down the road on the Physicians and Properties podcast.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, you have a lot of value to share, and you're already providing that value and giving that value to people who are listening, which is huge, man.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, Alex, as we close here, sir, can you tell us what's next for Physicians and Properties? What's next for the Row Room? And where can listeners connect with you and learn more?
Absolutely. Yes. Physicians and Properties. We release weekly podcast episodes there, most of the time with physician entrepreneurs who have realized that some degree of passive income can give them the freedom to practice medicine and live life how they want. You can find Physician Properties wherever you listen to podcasts. So that's what you can do there. We're going to keep putting out great content there and keep interviewing awesome people. And the really cool thing is I'm learning a ton from these folks as well. And I'm so glad to be able to share that with everyone who listens. The Row Room, we also do a weekly podcast there. That's focused more specifically on assisted living. Me and one of my partners, Charlie Cameron, we host that. And that's been amazing to get to interview different operators, investors, experts in the assisted living space there on the podcast. We do have a mastermind called the Row Room Assisted Living Mastermind, if folks want to check that out. We have on the website, the Row Room, theral.com, a free 10-step guide to purchase your first or next residential assisted living home. So folks can certainly get that. that. And then you can find me on all the different social media platforms, Instagram at Physicians and Properties, or just type my name. I'm the only one that exists. And then LinkedIn as well. And just more than happy to connect with anyone. And thank you for your time, Curtis. And again, thanks for doing what you do.
Absolutely, sir. That's been a great conversation. I'm sure it's going to be inspiring to many. Thanks again.
Thanks, Curtis. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, a rating, and share with somebody who you think may find it valuable. It is of great help as I try to grow this brand, The Physician's Mind. Thanks again for your support. Please check out our Instagram at The Physician's Mind and learn more at www.thephysiciansmind.com. Thanks again. Keep striving for excellence.